I was asked a question many years ago in an article, actually a small town local newspaper. They got to hear the story and what all goes on, and they said, "Well, what is your end goal with this? What's in it at the end of the day for Jason Michael?" And it pretty much come down to one thing, and I never thought about it. He had me on the spot a little bit. I said, "Whatever it takes to be 20 feet above whitetails come November." And other than that, that's it.
Coming at you from the Exodus headquarters in Ohio, let's jump right into today's episode.
We all recording?
Yep, we are recording.
Right. We are live at the Iowa Deer Classic in the conference room with no one else than Jason Michaels. He came in from a Midwest scurry, scooping up sheds, and he stopped here in Iowa to do a podcast with us. So thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely.
Where did you come from?
The last 4 or 5 days locked down with -3 temperatures, Iowa.
Okay.
And then the 4 or 5, probably 5 days prior to that was Kansas, when you guys were getting the pictures, shed hunting down there and doing mineral sites.
It's hard to keep up with you, man.
It is. I don't even know where I'm at right now. I don't even know what day of the week it is.
It's Saturday, and we're in Des Moines. So.
Okay, that's a start.
Yeah, you got to look at the sun and see what time it is here yet today. But a common way we start this podcast is we ask kind of who you are and what do you do for a living. So if you want to dive into that.
Jason Michael, originally born and raised in central Pennsylvania. And, graduated high school, jumped into the Air Force for 4 years. Got out after that 4-year stint, and pretty much have been any type of landscaping, grass mowing, worked for some companies, running chainsaws, just pretty much been a nomad before that word really come to life with the clothing line. Been on the road, just being a drifter in a good way with the seasons when they come, and just really have never left off the throttle. I got out of the Air Force at age 22, and here I am 46 and 22 plus years straight on the road. Kansas, been there. I've got a lifetime license there, and then been doing the Midwestern thing as much as I can since then.
I know I've personally known you for four years now, I think, something like that.
Comfortably 4, yep.
Constantly texting back and forth, and then there's lapses of, non-communication, I'll call it. But it's like, I get a text from you, like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, not much, just sitting in the office." "Oh, I just showed up to Kansas. I'm doing this. Last week I was in Wisconsin putting in water holes with this guy, and I was in Iowa planting food plots, and then I got to be in New York next week to run a chainsaw and do this stuff with this landscape company. Then I'm going to be back in Ohio next week. Do you want to hook up?" Like, I'm like, dude, like, do you ever slow down? Like, how many miles do you put on a vehicle a year?
It's a mess. And the truth of that one is between 42 and 45,000 miles a year, I'll average. When I was hitting the turkey thing real hard, probably 4, 5, 6 years ago, it was always 45,000 miles a year. But just whatever it takes. I was asked a question many years ago in an article, actually a small town local newspaper. They got to hear the story and what all goes on, and they said, "Well, what is your end goal with this? What's in it at the end of the day for Jason Michael?" And it pretty much come down to one thing, and I never thought about it. He had me on the spot a little bit. I said, "Whatever it takes to be 20 feet above whitetails come November." And other than that, that's it. That really is it. I mean, I worked with nuclear power plants there. There was a stint where I was 8 months on, 4 months off. You'd get laid off, and it was perfect, October through January. I've had off every year for like a 7-8 year window. And then, got into some other things, found some other monies, worked in the hunting industry a little bit, a couple grand here and there, nothing major, and just found a way to do it. And then I started guiding more and more in Kansas, and that would supplement, anywhere from $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in the fall, just enough to keep the wheels turned, the phone bill paid. And, the truth of the matter, a lot of people say, "How do you really do it, though? What the heck's up with that? Did you win the lottery, or is there money there?" The answer is no. But ultimately, for me, I guess my blessing behind the scenes easily would be my parents. I've got a place to live. I don't know what my dad would do if I ever did get married and moved off. He said he just loves it that I'm there. And, if it wasn't for that, it just would not work. There's no way. And then just door knocking, getting to know people. Next thing you know, 20 years goes by. And a lot of the older people I've gotten to know, I eat and sleep in 6, 7 different states all over the country. So logistically, that's like, to me, 80% of it. A place to stay and eat 12 months out of the year, and then the rest is just borrowed time for me trying to find gas money to keep the wheels turning.
That's a heck of an approach, man. That's a lifestyle.
It's all it is. I mean, one time I asked a bodybuilder, how do you train for that competition, or a triathlon guy that's going to Hawaii? I said, now what do you do 1-2 months prior to that? What do you do to really train for it? And he just laughed, and he said what you said exactly. He said, there is no training. Either you do it every day or you don't compete. And that's really all it is for me. Is just, it's a whitetail game. It's a turkey game. It's, just full throttle,
So speaking of, a lot of times we get together, we're always talking about whitetails. But I want to touch real quick and have you tell the story of 5, 6, 7 years ago of the article in Peterson Bow Hunting of your World Slam, and what that was. Give us the recap on that.
Absolutely. It was, I believe it was the spring of 2013. I was probably, right now I'm probably 13, 14 years into what you would call just strictly bow hunting turkeys, decoy setup, ground blind, pretty much the normal approach. But then, around 2009, 10, 11, did a couple grand slams with the shotgun. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I started bow hunting turkeys. I'm like, I knew a guy that did have a couple dollars, and I was in the process of working on a decoy, and they helped fund my trip. So basically everybody knows it as the Grand Slam, the World Slam, the Mexican Slam, and the Canadian Slam. And again, I'd done 3 or 4 Grand Slams, and then I did a World Slam, which is your Osceola, your Rio, your Merriams, all your U.S. birds, and then you got to jump across the border to Mexico and do a Rio Grande, and then you got to go further down into the Yucatan over by what most people know as Cancun and kill an ocellated turkey. So I went and did that with a shotgun. And I think 2 years went by, if that was around 2011. 2013, I thought, man, I got a couple dollars to work with. I got some guys behind me. So I went and did it. And it was, the toughest part of it was, okay, I got the money to do it, and I have the places to go hunt. But I had the logistics was the problem. So you had to do a Grand Slam, a World Slam, a Mexican Slam, and a Canadian Slam. And I chose to do it all in one spring, and I chose to do it with a bow. And I had no choice, even after going on the Canadian Slam, bringing in the end of it, from Ontario, flying over to British Columbia, going from getting an Eastern to getting a Merriam's. No different than the U.S. birds, just logistically. You got to do it there, prove it, you video it, you document it, you're crossing the border and all that stuff. So I did it, and I needed 9 birds. And at the end of the run, 58 days in one consecutive spring, I did it. And I ended up with 19 adult gobblers, all with a bow and arrow, all on videotape. So I got back home, and people were like, man, I don't know about that. It's like sometimes people shoot a big deer, and the neighbors start looking at it. They're like, man, I don't know. That's a big deer. That might be a record. Truth be told, National Wild Turkey Federation got a hold of it, and then eventually Peterson's Bow Hunting and them putting their heads together and documenting it, the NWTF being the nail in the coffin. That hunt, they had no name for it, so they called it the Ultimate Slam. And to this day, no one's ever even attempted it with a shotgun.
That's crazy.
So,
you did it with a bow.
Yeah, and my joke is, for the most part, I've always thinking all these big money hunters, and God bless them, they're all over, like Jim Shockey, doing great things around the world. I'm like, how can a guy making $20,000 a year be the first person to ever do that? But basically, they deemed it as the Chuck Adams of the turkey world. He was the first to do the North American Slam with a bow. I was the first to do that hunt of its kind. Period.
So 58 days, 19 gobblers. How many miles?
Oh my gosh.
It's in Peterson's Bow Hunting. We did it the best we could. The map's there. Basically, it comes down to 7,000 miles behind my truck and 7,000 miles by air because of going into Mexico and then logistics back and forth from Ontario to British Columbia. It equaled out 14,500, I think.
That's insane. That is just insane. I didn't know. I'm glad I didn't know the story before because that is absolutely insane. And I think you're going to be the only guy to do that for a long time.
Ask me if I want to do it again.
I'm going to guess no.
No, not anytime soon. No.
That's I mean, that's a feat in itself. Like, that's a once in a lifetime type feat. I feel to do that. Now, roughly, how much did series or season cost roughly?
$20,000.
So 20,000. So if someone else wants to do that, they're gonna
Yep.
have to scrounge up 20 G's and go chase
Yep.
turkeys all
and
over.
I had the logistics worked out that I pretty much got my oscillated for free and got my Rio Grande for free in Mexico, and that really helped offset a lot of that, or it could be a little more than that actually.
Holy cow!
That's nuts. I mean, I've known about that for a while. I actually have that article that the Peterson's publication at home on, it's marked with a Post-it note or something on the bookshelf with a stack of my other, saved magazines that my wife wants me to throw away that I never will. But I'll have to give it to you sometime, Jake. Just so you could
I got to read that. I want
through
to.
it.
Yeah, I want to read through
It's pretty
that.
crazy.
So I mean, I think that's a good story for people to understand kind of who you are and what you're all about. Now, I don't know if it was on air or previously that you mentioned back in the day where, you hunted about 50% turkeys, 50% deer, and that has kind of transitioned to you hunt deer mainly, and your endeavors with turkey hunting have kind of helped you with whitetails. Do you want to touch on that at all?
Absolutely. Like even currently, like this spring coming up, I'll be in 4 states, basically do the Grand Slam again. I always go to Florida. Obviously, 2/3 of Florida, maybe 3/4 of it now. They're spreading a little more. It's getting a little more watered down there with the Osceola moving into the Eastern's country. I do that every year, and I usually shoot one. Once in a while, two. But my big thing now is hog hunting. So I'm going to go down there for a 2-3 week window. And fortunate this year, I'm lucky to borrow what they call that thermal. So we're going to really work on the pigs there a lot. And then take advantage. Like I said, I'll hunt turkeys maybe 10% of the time I'm there. And then I'll migrate into Kansas and Iowa and whatnot, scrape the Rio Grande country a little bit, go up into Nebraska and do the Merriams and just bounce around. But ultimately, even back 20 years ago, just obviously being passionate, for the budget I had to work with, knowing there was public grounds out there for me to get on. And the boom wasn't so big. I'm 46 now, but even after the Air Force at age 22, 24, 25, there wasn't no outdoor channel. There was no sportsman channel. The hype wasn't there. My passion was, and that real estate was out there for me to go after. But that's just pretty much it. Then it was like 50-50. Now it's like 90% whitetails, 10% turkey. And I still love turkey hunting, and I always will continue to do it. And I am truly, 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 people say it, oh, I would just as soon watch someone else shoot a turkey than me. I truly mean it. If I truly never killed another turkey again and could just be out there and watch them and listen to them and help people do it and pick some morel mushrooms along the way, I'm going to be fine the rest of my turkey career. But, there's always a new spot for a mineral site. There's always a new door to knock on. There's always a river system to look at or something. So, yeah, for me right now, it's, still on pretty much the same dollar, that $20,000-$25,000 a year income. And you just make the most of it. And when you start running out of money, you just start backing it down. But it's still a public land game for me. I've gotten to know some people now in Iowa, in Ohio. Now I'm into like that 150, 160, 170 caliber deer on trail camera. So I feel I have a chance at getting them. So, but before it was always a 120, 125, and then occasionally a 130, 135, when I was starting out, and just tickled with it, So ultimately that's where I'm at right now today.
I'm glad you kind of clarified that or disclosed that, because I think people have the excuse or thought, or people just, I can't scrounge up the cash to go do this, or I can't. They have all these self-limiting thoughts, and you're the example of make it happen. If you want to do it, you'll make it happen. You'll scrap together whatever you need to, knock on the doors, make friends to pursue what you truly enjoy. So
absolutely, and of course this is a no-brainer. There's people that know what it is, and there's actually people that have this at their fingertips. But again, for a guy like me that is extremely limited with income, I don't know if I would tell him this, but that Onix Hunt Map that I have the U.S. in my phone, my Apple iPhone, for $100 a year, they could probably charge me between $300 and $500 a year for that subscription, and I'll still find the money. That one tool alone, and then of course here we are, in the trail cam world with you guys. Those two things alone, the trail camera, the Onix Hunt Map helps me find what I'm looking for out there. All the public ground, and the secret to me, for Kansas, if I could give one little thing out now, yes, public hunting ground is a great thing. You see them big billboard signs, such and such forest or such and such public ground. More importantly, if you're going to direct your efforts to Kansas, and there's a lot of hype there, it's right on, Iowa's butt as far as television goes. Key in on what we call WHIA, WHIA, walk-in hunting access, foot traffic only. And that's off the radar. You'll find it on Onix Hunt Map, but you won't see the hype of it in the normal hunting regs or on the TV. They don't talk about it much. So just a little tidbit there on Kansas, but absolutely.
That's good advice. What are you looking for when you're trying to locate particular pieces of the public on Onix? Do you have a process, or are you looking for river systems per se that has timber cover and ag, or what are you looking for?
Yeah, that would be the big thing. There's not a lot of agricultural programs on public hunting grounds. Ohio's pretty good with it. Down in the south central part, there's a couple places there that let corn, soybeans, and milo stand. Nebraska's actually pretty good with it in the south central part. Kansas does do pretty good with that, and they are required to let, depending on what the farmer has worked out with the state, they got to let 10% of it stand, sometimes 20% of it stand. Now the farmer's paid for it. It's win-win for them. Mm-hmm. So for you as a hunter, you can base off that a little bit. But, I seen an individual down here today walking around with a book by, just someone I'm just think is an absolute gem in this business, would be Bill Winke. And he understands that, he gets it, and you watch him talk and he's for real. But he wrote a simple little book. I'm just going to guess it's 70, 80 pages thick. It's just a paperback, and it's called Drainages and Creek Ditches. And that, you brought it up there a little, Jake, but I key in on that big time. I'll either look for long drainages with timber in the bottom, that kind of zigzags through the grass, them long, just as a figure of speech, 50 yards wide and 5 miles long. Well, they aren't going to be way out in the open, maybe 200 to 600 yards away, very rarely, but they'll kind of run those edges. And then, or for me, being from Pennsylvania originally, these guys, even in Iowa, man, that's a 500-acre block of timber. I'm like, I'll take it. I know you want your draws and your drainages and your fingers, but I'll take it because it's in there. It's in there somewhere. And just to jump off the subject on that, if I could throw something out for a viewer, especially just a newbie, just to keep something in the back of your mind, a little firepower. A little goal for you to look for. Every day you go in the woods, or 20 years from now, should you invest in a piece of property. One of the greatest books I've ever read in my life, and I've only read 3 of them, so that doesn't make it too hard to figure that out. But the best piece of knowledge is, and little tidbits I've ever had thrown at me, and the viewers can look this up or write it down. Barry and Gene Wenzel from Bow Hunting October Whitetails. Original DVDs in 1983, 84, 85. We'd ride pedal bikes to rent those VHSs for $1, and keep them for a week. I believe it was Gene Wenzel wrote it, and here I am guessing 10, 11 years ago. And it's a hardback. It's called Come November. And under it in fine print on the cover it says, 50 years of studying whitetails and paying attention. And I don't care if it's talking about crows, ticks and shakers, and all the extra little nonsense things you would ever think of that wouldn't be in that book. It's in there. But he does have one quote in there, and it's, I feel, a T-shirt or a slogan, something should be marketed after it. If you have 10 acres to hunt, or let's kind of keep it real, maybe 100 acres to hunt. Once you start getting 300, 400, 500 acres, there's going to be 2 or 3 of these examples. But he simply said this. Your goal is to find that magic tree, and that magic tree means more whitetails walk by that one tree on that 10 acres or that 50 acres or that 100 acres than any other tree in the woods. And your job's to find that tree and then have enough common sense, even if you only have 2% of whitetail in you. Just because it's October 1st and you're excited and it's your first day off and it's the opening day of archery, does not mean you run in there and hunt that tree on opening day because that's tradition. That's the way we were raised rifle hunting with my grandfather and my dad. Every year on opening day of rifle, you went to a specific tree and you sat there and you waited. That's what you did. If deer come by, great. If they didn't, great. So use your head, find that one specific tree, try and decide if it's a morning tree or an evening tree. Is it in the interior by bedding, or is it out maybe by the food source? And know again if it's a morning or evening, and then hunt it when the wind is right for that tree. No one can answer that question but you. You own the property, you have that tree, you're going to know if it's right or wrong. And it, Bill Winke said it in his book. He has one tree that he averages hunting one set every 2 years. And that's just the way that is. Now, if it's the peak of the rut and you're hitting November 10th, 12th, 14th, whatever, yeah, you can walk into the interior of a big piece of timber and get up that tree that yields you ample amount of cover on a creek ditch where 3 or 4 trails come together in a 30, 40 yard area. Then you can sit there dark till dark for 5 days straight if it's the peak of rut. But yeah, you just want to look for that tree and know how to hunt it at the right time of year and handle it with kid gloves. But yeah, I always thought that was pretty cool by them. More deer walk by one tree in the woods than any other tree out there. It's your job to find it.
Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the Wetzel brothers, because you're the second person today that has dropped Barry and Gene, and I think a lot of people who are consuming whitetail content right now are unfamiliar with them and what they've done, like through the 70s and 80s, and basically killing giant mature whitetails with purpose before anyone else was even thinking about it.
With a recurve in a no managed part of the world. I mean, just
Exactly.
they did it.
No trail cameras too.
No
at
trail
that point.
Didn't have it.
Let's talk about how do you use your trail camera. So we talked a little bit about how you locate a property to hunt and the process of finding that tree that most mature bucks walk by. What does your trail camera strategy look like? Obviously, you hunt a lot of different ground and a lot of different properties. What does that look like, and how are you trying to find specific bucks to hunt or caliber a deer to hunt?
For me, again, keep in mind my budget and keep in mind that I hunt up until about last year, the year before, so 20 plus years public ground. So you do got to be a little cagey. There's always that risk of, someone's going to lift your camera, take it off the side of the tree. So even 8-10 years ago, when the hangers started becoming a big thing for the trail camera and they started having the threads in the bottom, we were doing whatever we could to get everything 10 feet high. I'd use screw and tree steps. Chad, I've heard you say different times before in the southern part of Ohio, you go in with a climbing stick.
Yep.
Put that up high, push it, stretch it a little bit, and then get up on top of that. And the next thing you know, you can have a camera, with your reach comfortably 10 feet. And so we are running them high for, call it theft reasons. But more importantly, because I've really only truly have had one camera properly lifted from me and maybe one tree stand. And the tree stands, they probably aren't taken from me because they don't want to go get them where they're at up there. But anyway, I think the biggest thing in this trail cam thing for me, and I know you guys have all heard this before, but it'll never get old to keep mentioning it. There are deer, and we know these deer, we keep hearing this, they're like people. Some are moody, some don't like crowds, some are morning people, some, you just learn who you like or don't like. Well, them deer are the same way. I promise you, even in heavily pressured areas back in Pennsylvania and God forbid New Jersey, it's a war over there. There are deer by age 3.5. And I never really had the stones to do it. And I've talked to both you guys, even at Harrisburg 2 weeks ago. Hey, if I do a video setting, what's my best odds here and what's what? How many times have we had a camera take a picture of a deer, even a doe, and she's in stride, looking hard to the right at the camera, and she's locked on the lens, and it's 2 a.m. The guys have proven over and over again, if you had that on video, there's times they wheel back out of there. But even more importantly, when these deer start getting even 4 and 5 and 6 years old, maybe it's only 5%. I couldn't, dare to guess what that number is. It could be 10%. They look at that camera one time in velvet. There's guys that have claimed they've never seen that deer again, not in 2 more years. And it's a very distinct deer with a drop or a massive 10-inch brow on this side and 5, something really that sticks out. So we're running our cameras high and for the deer's sake and getting them up in the crotch of a tree, or we're putting them on the ground in under a stump and angling them upwards. And we're getting away with a lot more. But back to your question too, with that, what I'm trying to do is find terrain features. And even on Onix Map, they have the, what do you call that, the terrain. With
The hybrid setting where it shows satellite and the topography of it.
The topography, absolutely. So I'm getting out on points, where I think the bedding area is, and I just put cameras in, and I'm doing the best I can with, obviously I'll run an Energizer, but if I can run them better batteries, what are they? The
lithiums.
The lithiums
yep.
and stuff. I do that because I'm always away 3-4 months at a clip sometimes till I get back. And just try and piece it together with the camera, bedding to feeding, feeding to bedding, and just putting boots on the ground when I get there in the off season. In Pennsylvania, a big thing was high school wrestling, and we always had a saying, champions are made in the off season. So March is when I do a lot of my walking. Just like it's a broken record with a lot of the guys that are really pursuing big deer. You got to take advantage of the off season, and run your cameras year round. They're doing you no good. People say we're going to go hunting tonight, or aren't we? Well, you aren't killing nothing on the couch. Well, your camera ain't doing a damn bit of good, in the closet. So get it out there and use it.
Yeah, all valid points. So with those camera strategies, I would assume, because you're not, they're kind of scattered throughout the country. Most of the time, you're gathering inventory data on what deer is kind of in the area, and then you're tying those pieces together with like boots on the ground scouting, whether that's in season or post season, to actually move in and make a move, or try to kill a specific deer. Is that kind of accurate, I guess?
It's almost, and I say again, almost very accurate, except for the point is public ground. Again, keep it in mind, my budget, my style of hunting. So I'll put it in there to just get inventory, period. Is this camera got 600 pictures on it, on a burst mode setting? And again, they've been called trail cameras since this game's begun. They aren't a rut camera. They aren't a scrape camera. They aren't a mineral site camera. They're a trail camera. So I will put them in regions just to get traffic flow. And believe me, I get it. A lot of people say, yeah, but what's your summertime trail cameras doing? Because that's all going to change come October or November. I get that. But deer, even just like yesterday, I was going to come up here to the show. I did not. I elected to stay an hour and a half south and invest in public ground and take advantage of the snow one more day. And the same trails they're using now, give or take some food sources and some alternate bedding areas, are the same trails they're going to use probably come like early September and moving in October. Where they feed in the summer and where they velvet in the summer, yeah, they, as a figure of speech, they live and die inside of a 500-yard area, and then come November it might be a 500-acre area. I get that, but still, I'm just trying to get inventory of just deer movement in general and put myself, use the camera to put my odds in a better place.
Yeah, understood.
When you're scouting those pieces of public, are you actively like annotating those maps, or like putting a waypoint of here's a trail, so you remember it the next time you're down there? Basically, does your Onix have a ton of waypoints? Because that's how I kind of picture them.
Yep, and you see that, and that is a big thing. And I have looked at, especially the outfitters. Ooh, I bet they got 200 of them waypoints on their phone. Honestly, Jake, right now, between Ohio, between Iowa, between Kansas, those 3 or maybe the 4 or 5 states that I'm in, but those main ones, I don't know if I have 14 or 15 waypoints on there that are mega key for me during the peak rut. And then January is like no holds bar. I just go in and go completely opposite of where them waypoints are, try and, over years of doing it in a specific area, you start to figure it out, obviously. 2 to 3 years it takes to figure out a piece of property. And then I just start doing my own thing, and then I'm rogue. I'm real rogue. I'm off the wall, those first 2-3 weeks in October, and then from Christmas on, it's just night and day. But a lot of my waypoints will be pre-rut and rut waypoints, and then a lot of stuff I just kind of try to remember. I'm kind of the opposite of that a little bit myself.
I see. When do you find most success in hunting in general? As far as are you tagging most of those deer in the rut? October, December.
Absolutely.
When are you finding your most success?
For the last 20 years, if I had to throw one day out of the whole 3-month window, if you wanted to use October, November, and December as an example, Iowa was a perfect example one time. November 4th, and November 4th. Morning, and morning. And that's just maybe because I was back in the bedding, and November 4th is an extremely strong pre-rut day. It might be getting to where it's just about to come off of it. 5th and 6th will pretty much start turning into full-blown. By the 8th, 9th, 10th, for the most part, for sure. And yeah, that for the last 20 years, I mean, I say the last 20 years, that would be my window, a pre-rut or a rut, mostly peak rut. But for me now, October, and I would want to tell you December. Again, I'm just rogue. I want to hunt all the stages of the deer hunting season. I would like to be better in October than I currently am, and I'm going to try and be a better hunter during the month of October, here moving forward in the next 10 years. But yeah, for the most part, it's been that pre-rut or rut.
Me too.
Yeah. No, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Who can argue the fact that deer are on their feet more
Yeah.
during daylight than November 5th through the 15th?
It's a good time to
And
be in the woods.
I don't want to speak for you, Jake and Chad.
Yeah.
I've known you a little bit longer, obviously, but for the most part, we're opportunists. I don't got trail cameras of $5 over 160, and I get to know their personalities and go $2 and $5 are. They should be a little easier to kill than these other guys. So, I've got to know him over a 2-3 year period, and this guy, I'll try and kill him. He always shows up here on our late season food plot. I should be able to get him with a late muzzleloader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of think like that, but yeah, it's an interesting game. But I'm an opportunist. I still am an opportunist.
You have to be.
Yep.
I mean, you have to be.
So I keep going back to your just the crazy sporadic schedule, and this is I'm kind of really jumping topics here. But as you're talking, I'm visualizing, I'm going to call it insane work schedule or workload, whatever you want to call it, and trying to manage opportunistic times to be in the woods in just one state. So when you're in Ohio and Pennsylvania and maybe New York and then going to Kansas and Wisconsin or wherever you're going, I mean, is there a strategy like, hey, I'm gonna go hunt Kansas during the rut because I can get on a waterway and wait for those rut bucks to make those long super travel, those long super movements, and then I'm gonna come back to Ohio, maybe the southern part of the state, and hunt late season because I know food's limited and I'm gonna be over a food source, or like, is there any thought process there, or are you just
There is.
wherever you are, you are?
It is. But my passion has been Kansas. So I got this year coming up will be 23 years straight in a tree stand come November, if you will. But here's the nuts and bolts of it, and I'll try and give you the short version of this, because that easily could be a 30-minute topic, and it's just freaking awesome. And I like to hear other people, talk about their timing or their scheduling. So I'm going to take the first 2 weeks of Pennsylvania. Again, this is the third time I've said it here on this podcast. Keep in mind my income. So I don't have disposable money. I don't even have an extra $2-3 grand sitting there. So, now I can leave home earlier in October and go on the road. So I'm going to take the first 2 weeks of October. I'm going to try and burn 1, if not 2 doe tags in Pennsylvania, which, by the way, we think we're getting our season moved 2 weeks ahead. We might start September 15th now in Pennsylvania.
And maybe possibly Sundays.
Yes,
right?
possibly Sundays. And black bear's going to get moved 2 weeks up into archery more than it already got moved up last year at Halloween. So the archers are going to have a lot of advantages there. So I'm just trying to come to full draw a little bit, have some fun. If I see an illegal PA buck with 3 points on one side, depending on where I'm at, I may or may not shoot it. And then I'm going to delve in about October 15th or 18th. It's time to fly. And this year I come home 2 days before Christmas and left 2 days after Christmas. And I pretty much know, nothing's really written down. It's just chiseled in stone. I'm going to drop into Ohio for about 3-4 days and bow hunt, and probably plan on not even seeing nothing but a 2.5-year-old if I'm lucky. It's just the way it is. That area for me isn't really conducive for what I got. I don't have great ground in Ohio. At best, it's okay. And then I'm going to move on to Kansas and probably set my stands. Then I'm going to move up into Ohio and probably set a stand or 2. And then I might retrace my steps back, and if I have the money to get an Illinois tag or some friends to hunt with Missouri, I'm just burning a little time and letting the season start to fester. But the more I've gotten into this game, now I'm going to start, and I've done this before, my best really body weight deer, and we validated it. We weighed him, we filmed him 3 different camera angles, counting the GoPro, was Wisconsin, and I shot that deer October 22nd on a scrape line, and he meant business. His paw was moving, he was working the branch, and the Grim Reaper broadhead went through, and he went 30 yards, weighed 281 pounds. We never gutted him, and So what I'm getting at is I have a system there. I think Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, parts of Iowa, yeah, that's a great place to be the 4th week of October. Keep in mind, if you're an opportunist like I was, and you got 1 week to hunt, it almost has to be the 2nd week in November if you're going to wait 4 years to draw your tag in Iowa. If you're going to spend money to buy an expensive tag in Illinois, get room and board and food, right there's $1,500, and you haven't even stepped foot on public ground in Illinois. So, yeah, like Jake and I were joking here earlier, and he said he's the same way. That's your window to hunt, the 5th through the 15th, if you're going to spend your hard-earned dollars of November. But for me, having way more time on my hands now and a couple more dollars to work with, yeah, I do have that system where I go around the country, and then the end of October for me now is Iowa. The 1st week in November, depending on if I have an Illinois tag or I have friends to hook up with in Indiana, that's kind of a neat window. And then by the 15th of November, because I've been guiding for, I don't know, probably 10, 12 years in Kansas, that 15th through the 30th for me is what I call the peak of rut for me. I'm in the extreme southern tier of Kansas. I'm down by Oklahoma. So that's my window to do my personal bow hunting, and then usually as a rule, November 30th, December 1st, I guide for 5 to 10 days depending on the rifle hunters I have. And then after that, it's kind of clean up shop, work my way back into the state of Ohio, which I would just kill to be. And people say, why don't you do it then? Because it just hasn't fit my schedule yet, and I have a hard time letting Iowa go in the end of around Halloween and Illinois go in the 1st week in November, and I just got that routine. But I would love to be in Ohio in a tree stand the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th of November. But I'm going to get there. I'm going to do that. But once I go through all those states, those key 3 states, yeah, I go back, and for me, Ohio's clean up. And this year I was there 5 weeks, never shot an arrow. Just didn't work out. I had back-to-back floods, and I had 6 guys in our hunting camp in for muzzleloader that walked around like March of the Penguins, and that's a very, very critical time of year. Leaves are off, bedding areas limited, food sources are even more limited, and you can jack up a 500-600 acre lease farm pretty quick. So having them in camp and then having back-to-back floods 5 days apart just really kept me out of my area. So I pretty much hung the bow up the last week and said, more boots on the ground, get ready for next year. It is what it is. I know I can't even get on a 3.5-year-old deer now. Time to go walk. And I went 8 miles away and went on to some other public ground and got some permission on a couple 20 and 40 acre pieces and just walked and walked and walked. And so, yeah.
Well, I think the thing to take away from that, the story, of you coming, the example of this past season coming back to Ohio and having the floods and whatnot, is being able to improvise and still get something done when you know that, maybe you're not going to have the opportunity at the kind of deer, caliber deer that you would like to have the opportunity with. You're going elsewhere to put the work in to make sure you have that opportunity maybe next year or the next time something like that happens. So.
Yep, and there's always that part of it. Believe me, I get it. I was 20, I was 25, and even going into maybe my early 30s, I worked in even those electrical power plants and the nuclear power plants, 1,500 guys on one shift when they had that outage shutdown. Yeah, it's Pennsylvania. A lot of people hunted. And boy, wouldn't that be cool even if I could just take a 150-inch rack into work and show those guys. There's always that part of that what you call being viral, the Me Too's. And I can honestly tell you right now, there's probably the last 5 years, and I say this in a nice way, and here we are sitting in Iowa, ultimately the Mecca. I'm over it. I just want to visit with people I know on the road. I want to share meals, help them gut and drag their deer. It's Iowa. If I got a doe tag, I'll pop her. But I'm still an opportunist. I have a dream, maybe someday I too can kill a Boone and Crockett deer, hunting in these big states. But if it don't happen, I'm over it. At least I'm in a tree, And I've always had this saying, and honestly, trying to be sincere, I'm not in a hospital room with a tube down my throat fighting for my life. I'm still in a tree stand hunting. I was a veteran. I was overseas, never in any of the nasty stuff, Fortunate for me, the other guys, some of them didn't have a choice, but we're back home. We're thankful. I got my health. I can get out of bed. I can still climb trees, walk and talk and enjoy life. So, I don't take any of it for granted. I'm just thankful to be there. I just want to participate, buy my license, and do my best to kill the best deer I can.
I love that. I love the attitude because, a lot of people talk about it, but
no one actually.
Well, I know I personally know you, and every time I'm around you, that's the way you are. It's not, you're not coming on this podcast or writing a post on social media and just saying it. Like that's the way you live.
No, and if anybody really, I guess, I had to do some seminars in an area of Middleburg, Ohio. They kind of called it Mount Hope. It's an Amish community there, not terribly far from Akron. And my first night, that I did the seminars was Thursday night. 120 people there, and roughly 110 of them were Amish, and that were in the bleachers. And I was overwhelmed a little bit. But we talked about that in general, because Amish they're good people. I live by them in Pennsylvania, but just about being genuine, being true to yourself. And I think if anybody, you talk to someone for 10 minutes about whitetail. I mean, if you really step aside or sit down with them and have a sandwich and give them 10, 15 minutes of your time, and you're hopefully willing to listen to some of their stuff, you're going to know if someone's who they are. You're going to know the game. But I can honestly tell you, I mean, if someone tried to research me now, you could type in some stuff on Google, you'll find some turkey stuff, but you ain't going to find a damn thing on me on whitetails. And you aren't going to find me per se on Facebook. I did it like 8 years ago. I guess it's still there. I just don't do it. I don't know if I would know how to Instagram. I don't know that stuff.
You're not missing anything, man.
Yeah. It's just not in my DNA. I'm going to do it more. And I mean, some of the viewers out there would maybe know who I am a little bit, but a good friend of mine, Frank Lovich, has helped me so much in this world, and you'll see even my apparel I'm wearing today. My new ride in this world that's going to help accelerate me to getting on better deer as far as my dreams go, it's Lone Wolf Tree Stands, and that's my new ride in this world. And until that goes away, I ain't going nowhere else. I mean, so that's going to help me ultimately, and my job's to be the face of the company and go out and meet and greet and handshake and sit around a campfire and have a beer, have a Pepsi, have whatever it is you're going to do, and just visit and represent the sport of bow hunting.
That's what it's all about, and it's the path you take. I'm sure you'll cross many paths of many people. So
yeah, it's crazy. And I enjoy it. I mean, nothing's changed. I am who I am. 22 years, I'm the same person. Hopefully, 22 years from now, it's the same old broken record. I enjoy it.
Consistency.
That's it.
Well, I mean, anything else that you think up here?
I don't think. I mean, one thing I would add is a couple years ago you were a part of our roundtable discussion at the whitetail hacker thing, which we've cut up into some of the stuff that we have on Trail Cam Radio. So we're going to try to dig some of that stuff up and release it, I guess, initially for the first time and throw that stuff up on YouTube if we can recover some of it in the archives.
So you mentioned that you're not. Where can someone find you if they have to find you? Is there something you want to release? We'll put it in the description if they want to hunt you down. Is there a good place to contact you or?
Yeah, but I would say by this summertime more is going to happen because we got like 41,000 Instagram followers, I believe, a little over with Lone Wolf. So I'm going to come to light there, and I'm going to have a lot of, I guess, what do you call them tidbits and how-to segments and stuff. So I'm going to be doing some stuff there to create some activity there. But other than that, that's about it for right now.
Well, sounds good. Well, we can't thank you enough for your time and sitting down and talking whitetails and a little bit of life in general. So we can't thank you enough.
Absolutely. It was good to do it. And if I had to leave you with one thought, sometimes they have these little closing tidbits. It would just simply be, if you're 15, 16, 17 years old and you've never truly killed what you call a 15-inch spread 8-point, just keep your goals real. Go out and try and get that. And then if you're someone that's got 5 whitetails on the wall over 130 to maybe 140, and you want to try to go after a 150, then do that. Don't get caught up in the game where you got to live up to television expectations or magazines, or you're going to ruin it for yourself. So just ultimately be true to yourself, keep the game real between you and your close friends, and just press on and enjoy the game for what it is.
Great advice.
Right on.